The Radium Girls, the women who painted their own bones. To glow in the early decades of the 20th century, glowing watch dials represented progress. They were symbols of modern science, precision, and innovation. Soldiers could read them in the dark, pilots relied on them during night flights, and ordinary people admired the mysterious green light that seemed almost magical. Behind that glow, however, was a tragedy that would forever change workplace safety and expose one of the darkest examples of corporate negligence in American history. The women who painted those glowing numbers never imagined that every brushstroke was slowly poisoning them. They believed they had found respectable work with promising wages. Instead, they became known as the Radium Girls, young factory workers whose bodies absorbed deadly amounts of radioactive material, while the companies employing them insisted everything was perfectly safe. At the beginning of the 20th century, radium was considered one of science's greatest discoveries. After its isolation by Marie and Pierre Curie, newspapers celebrated it as a miracle element. Doctors experimented with it as a treatment for various diseases, manufacturers added it to cosmetics and health products, and advertisements claimed it could restore youth and vitality. Very few people understood the long-term dangers of radiation exposure. To the public, radium represented the future. As demand for luminous products increased, companies began hiring young women to paint watch dials with a special mixture containing radium. The work required steady hands and remarkable precision. Tiny numbers had to be painted perfectly, often using extremely fine brushes. The workers were taught a simple technique that became known as lip, dip, paint. First, they would place the paintbrush between their lips, twisting it into a sharp point. Then they dipped it into the glowing paint before carefully filling in the tiny numbers on the watch face. Within seconds, the point became dull again, and the process was repeated. Lip.dip.paint. Hundreds of times every single day. Every time they sharpened the brush with their mouths, they swallowed microscopic particles of radium. Supervisors encouraged the method because it increased speed and accuracy. The women trusted the instructions completely. After all, the company assured them that the paint was harmless. Many of the workers even enjoyed the unusual glow that surrounded them after work. Their dresses shimmered faintly in the darkness. Their hands sparkled. Some painted their fingernails or teeth with tiny amounts of luminous paint as a joke before attending dances. Friends laughed as they glowed under dim lights, completely unaware that the beautiful shimmer came from radioactive contamination accumulating inside their bodies. For several years, everything appeared normal. Then the illnesses began. It often started with a toothache. A perfectly healthy young woman would visit her dentist complaining about persistent pain. The tooth would be removed, but the wound refused to heal. Another tooth loosened. Then another. Soon parts of the jawbone itself became infected. Dentists were horrified. Instead of healthy bone, they discovered soft, decaying tissue that crumbled apart during examinations. In some cases, pieces of bone detached almost effortlessly. The damage continued spreading long after teeth had been removed. Doctors had never seen anything like it. The condition would later become infamous as Radium Jaw. The jawbones of affected workers slowly died from the inside. Radiation destroyed living bone tissue while leaving the victims in constant pain. Eating became difficult. Speaking became painful. Severe infections developed, and many women endured years of suffering before finally dying. But the jaw was only the beginning. The radium that entered their bodies behaved like calcium. Their bones absorbed it naturally, unable to distinguish between an essential mineral and a deadly radioactive element. Once inside the skeleton, radium continued emitting radiation day after day, month after month, year after year. Their bones weakened. Their immune systems failed. Their blood production was damaged. Some developed anemia, others experienced spontaneous fractures. Many suffered cancers that doctors struggled to explain. Yet, despite the growing number of mysterious illnesses, the companies responsible refused to accept responsibility. Instead, blame shifted toward the victims. Some physicians suggested poor dental hygiene. Others claimed the women suffered from infections unrelated to their jobs. In certain cases, rumors spread that sexually transmitted diseases were responsible for the symptoms, unfairly damaging the reputations of women who had done nothing more than follow workplace instructions. The companies eagerly supported these alternative explanations. Acknowledging the truth would have meant admitting that their manufacturing process was slowly killing employees. Evidence later revealed an even darker reality. While factory workers were repeatedly told the paint was completely safe, many scientists and executives associated with the companies handled radium very differently. Protective measures were introduced for researchers working directly with radioactive materials. They understood enough to avoid unnecessary exposure, yet the women painting watch dials received no comparable protection. The contrast was impossible to ignore. Those with knowledge protected themselves. Those performing the dangerous work were left unprotected. Among the workers determined to seek justice was Grace Fryer. Like many of her co-workers, she had faithfully followed every instruction given by her employer. By the time she realized the true cause of her illness, much of the damage had already become irreversible. Finding legal representation proved surprisingly difficult. The companies possessed enormous financial resources, respected reputations, and teams of experienced lawyers. Few attorneys believed a group of sick factory workers could successfully challenge powerful corporations. Eventually, Grace Fryer and several other women brought their case before the courts. The lawsuit attracted national attention. Newspapers reported heartbreaking stories of women who had once been healthy, teenagers, but now struggled simply to stand or speak. Some were so weak they could barely appear in court. Others knew they would not live long enough to see the final verdict. The companies attempted to delay proceedings repeatedly. Time had become another weapon. Every month that passed increased the chance that another witness would die before testifying. Public sympathy, however, continued growing. Medical researchers began conducting more thorough investigations. Independent experts confirmed what many had already suspected. Radium was not simply dangerous. Inside the human body, it remained radioactive for years, continuously damaging surrounding tissue. The evidence became overwhelming. Faced with increasing public outrage and mounting scientific proof, the companies eventually reached settlements with several of the women. Although the financial compensation could never restore their health, the legal victories established an important principle that employers could no longer ignore. Occupational diseases simply because scientific knowledge was incomplete when the damage occurred. The impact extended far beyond the watch factories. The Radium Girls transformed workplace safety standards across the United States. Their cases encouraged stricter industrial health regulations, improved handling procedures for hazardous materials, and stronger legal protections for workers exposed to dangerous substances. Their suffering also accelerated research into radiation safety, influencing medical practices, scientific laboratories, and countless industries that relied on radioactive materials. Today, the glowing watches they painted remain museum pieces, reminders of an era when scientific excitement outpaced scientific understanding. But the true legacy does not belong to the watches. It belongs to the women. Most of them were ordinary young workers hoping to earn an honest living. They trusted their employers, believed the assurances they were given, and paid an unimaginable price for that. Trust, their courage in confronting powerful corporations while facing terminal illness, reshaped labor, law, and occupational medicine for generations to come. The glow that once covered their clothes eventually faded. The glow hidden inside their bones never did. Long after the factory lights were switched off, long after the lawsuits ended, and long after the companies disappeared into history, the story of the Radium Girls continued to illuminate a painful truth. Scientific progress without accountability can become catastrophe, and sometimes the brightest discoveries cast the darkest shadows.